Welcome to this video about the reporting of student progress and how we go about it at Cox Green School. My name is Mr. Shields. I'm one of the deputy head teachers at the school, and I want to spend just a few minutes just going through the various reports as they differ slightly from year to year, what is included in the report, the sort of detail and what that means, and also the frequency of the reporting. So I'll start off with the Key Stage 3 assessment reports for year 7 and year 8. So the report that is on the screen currently is the sort of report that you would see. So just starting at the top, you can see that there is a general overview of the attendance from the beginning of the year. So this always runs from September, or shows you from September all the way through to the point at which the report has been published, and then a breakdown on authorised and unauthorised absences. There is again a breakdown on positive points and also behaviour points, and then on the right hand side the number of reflections. Just above that, in the top corner, you can see there is something called the Key Stage 3 starting point. So for this particular student, they had a Key Stage 3 starting point of a 2. Now, what that means is it's an indicator of their prior ability coming into the school. So they take all students in year 7, take a range of CAT tests, and the average score is then taken to put them into a starting point band. 4 being those students who get the highest score, so 115 plus on average, 3 just below, between 105 and 114. If they're in Key Stage 3 starting point 2, they'll have an average CAT score between 86 to 104, and then Key Stage 3 starting point 1 is a CAT score of under 85. Now, these ranges do give an indicative GCSE target range. However, it is purely indicative. And the reason we don't apply a GCSE target at this point with a specific grade is because over 5 years, there's so much that can change. Students can improve so much, or they can, in some cases, they can maybe hit a bit of a plateau. So we don't give a GCSE target grade at this point, merely a starting point. Now, we report against that. So at the bottom of that table, on the report, you can see it also in that 4th column below the table there, is you can see where the students are. When we report whether a student is meeting their expected progress. Okay, so you would see that if they're in line with that sort of CAT score range, around that starting point where we feel that student should be based on their starting point, they'll be given meeting expected progress. If we feel they're working above that, they'll get exceeding expected progress on the report, and if we feel that they are below that, it would show that they are developing. So anything which is flagged as developing might be a subject area that you may want to get further information from the member of staff or the learning leader who regarding the progress that maybe they're not making as much as they should be, and you might want to contact the school regarding that. In addition to that, there is the behaviour for learning attitude and effort, and behaviour for learning behaviour. So those, the 2nd and 3rd column, so the first column next to the subject column is the behaviour for learning attitude and effort. The column next to that is the behaviour for learning behaviour, and there's an important distinction there. So they both work off an exemplary, good, some concerns, major concerns grading. So 1 being exemplary, 2 good, 3 some concerns, 4 major concerns, and on the report you will just see the text itself. But there is a distinct difference between attitude and effort and behaviour. So attitude and effort, which is the first column, that reflects how well students are working in class, how engaged they are, how often they complete all of their work, how proactive they are around the work that they do. So that reflects the attitude and effort. Behaviour, the behaviour column, or what that is supposed to represent, is actually how they're behaving in class. So not necessarily their attitude and effort, but are they behaving? Are they disrupting lessons? Are they focused and not causing any disruption whatsoever? And a grade is applied for that. So a student can behave very well and not cause any disruption, but they can have a low attitude and effort grade because they're not completing their work, they're not engaged in their lesson. And so you might see a difference between those two. You wouldn't always see those gradings being the same for a student in a subject. So that's the Key Stage 3 assessment report, and that gives you a sort of breakdown of what you would see if you have a student in year 7 or in year 8. When they move to year 9, we report differently. So now you'll notice there is a target grade and a current grade. So rather than having a starting point, which is an overall starting point, for every subject, a student will receive a target grade. Now, that target grade is generated from we use the Fisher Family Trust organisation, and they have a target setting system, and it is there as a benchmark for that student. So based on either their Key Stage 2 SATs data or their CAT data, and using using those grades, those marks, and also a little bit of contextual information around that student, that we set, or the Fisher Family Trust set a target grade for that student. So we use what's called the Fisher Family Trust 20, which the way in which that works is that students who have, let's say for example, we have a student in English and they get a particular CAT score, a certain CAT score, they would look at other students who historically have got that same CAT score, and they will then extrapolate that and say, right, that if you had 100 students who got that CAT score in the past, they take the top 20, or the one that came sort of 20th in terms of their overall progress, what grade they achieved at GCSE, that is then on average, that's the target grade that they then receive. So slightly different, you might get slightly different grades for some subjects. We do provide, around the creative subjects now, we do look at just tweaking that slightly and taking the teachers that have taught them through year 7, year 8, and take their advice on what they think the target grades should be in those creative subjects, because the CAT scores do tend to test generally around sort of academic aptitude rather than creative. So you do sometimes get a difference in the target grades for those creative subjects. But all of the more academic subjects, English, maths, science, computer science, geography, history, etc., they will have a target grade which is based purely off the Fisher Family Trust target setting process. So that will generate the target grades, so that you can see in the 4th column, and that will sit, that's the target grade a student will have throughout the rest of the time up until they finish their GCSEs. Now, with the assessment reporting itself, we report the current grade. So that current grade will reflect the GC grade that student, or the member of staff who teaches them, feels that student is working at that moment in time, taking into context the year they are in. So in year 9, a student might be given a current grade 5, but that will be based on the work they are producing in year 9. It won't necessarily be grade 5 work, but the teacher will take into account the fact that they are 2 years away from taking their GCSEs. So a student that is given a grade 5 in year 9, or a current grade 5, that is the work you'd expect a year 9 student who would then go on to get a grade 5 in year 11 to be producing. So again, we put it's a contextualized grade there. However, the current grade is based off current work. There is no prediction involved at all. It is based on the work that a student has done, either if it's the first report since the start of the year, or if it's a subsequent report since the last assessment report. So it is an up-to-date grade on how how students are, or that student is working or has worked since the last assessment report. The progress level is fairly straightforward. If a student their current grade is above their target grade, it will show as being above target. If they are have a current grade below their target grade, it will be below target, and obviously if it's the same, then it will be on target. And you can see also with the target grades, it's not just the grade itself. There is some additional granularity. So a target grade of a 5+ means that their target is, they're expected to be a very strong grade 5 and potentially, not far off a grade 6. So it's, as a target, it might be something students are thinking about. Excuse me. And then a 5- would be, yes, they're expected to get a grade 5, but it would be a bit of a close run thing in terms of expectation at the FFT 20 level. So that's something also to bear in mind when you're taking into account those target grades. And then the last report I'm going to show you is a Key Stage 4 assessment report. So this is the sort of report you see in year 10 and year 11. And the only difference here, it is exactly the same as year 8 and year 9, but the only difference you'll see here is that there are fewer subjects, and obviously students have selected their options in year 9. If I go back to that year 9 report, the reason why, even though Year 9 is Key Stage 3, the reason why we use GCSE target grades at that point is because they have their options to select, and we feel obviously it's very important that staff can give an indication as to whether or not, based on their target grade and also their current grade, whether or not it is a subject they may want to take forward as one of their GCSE options into Year 10 and Year 11. So that's why we changed the reporting in Year 9 at that point, even though it's still Key Stage 3. It's to enable for a more considered decision around optional subjects. So the Year 10, Year 11 report, going back to that, exactly the same. You'll just notice there are fewer subjects, but the reporting process is behaviour for learning, attitude and effort, behaviour for learning, behaviour, target grade, current grade, obviously what the progress is, the comparison between current grade and target grade, and then you have the list of teachers there on the right hand side who are the teachers for those students. And that would be effectively Year 12 and Year 13, again, identical in terms of the report, but again, fewer subjects. You would have 3 subjects being reported on the report. If in terms of reporting frequency, you'll see that it depends on the year group. So Year 7, 8, 9 and 10 all receive 3 reports over the course of the year. Year 10 get their first report in January, Year 7, 8 and 9 in early February, and then all 4 of those year groups get a second report in July towards the end of the year. That'll be the penultimate week of the academic year when those reports are released. Then Year 11, 12 and 13, they all get 3 reports over the course of the year. The first report for all 3 has just been released in October, is a behaviour for learning and attitude to learning only. So there is no current grade that is produced. It's just reflecting their students' behaviour for learning and attitude to learning. Then at the beginning of January, immediately after the Christmas holidays, in the first week, a full report is produced for all 3 of those year groups, and then a third report is produced, but depending on the year group, determines when that is published. That report is published for Year 11, Year 13. That is in March. So really, that last opportunity to see where students are at in the lead up to the exams in the summer. And for Year 12, we publish it in July, which is after the mock exams, which are held after the June or the May half term. If you do have any further questions regarding the reporting process, or how it's run, or target grades, or the current grades and how those are generated, please don't hesitate to contact me at my email address on the slide. Other than that, thank you very much for listening.